Hi, hello. My name is Ashley, and I recently bought this cargo van to travel full time through the United States. I want to talk today about what I chose and why I chose it in hopes that I can help someone else, maybe in the same predicament that I was in, on what vehicle to choose for traveling. When I was researching the type of rig I wanted for full-time travel, I came across a lot of different options and also a lot of different contradicting information. I spent hours making pros and cons lists of anything from SUV build-outs, truck campers, buses, box trucks, cargo vans, etc. I want to lay it out there that this is my personal research that I had done over the span of about 5 years. What my requirements are for my rig may not be your requirements. I looked at primarily 3 different types of travel rigs, but it is worth considering all the different options out there. There's a truck. I love being in the country, but man, those farmers are loud. So the first thing I wanted to consider was reliability for my vehicle, both mechanically and in road conditions. I live in the Midwest, so it does get pretty icy here in the winters. Most of the cargo vans were pretty good with off-roading capabilities if you upfitted them and got beefier tires and a better suspension. Overall, truck campers are definitely the superior road condition driver thing, if that makes sense. Most trucks are 4x4, so that just comes as a given. I knew that buses and box trucks would be hard to maneuver because they are bigger and longer and wider. It could also be really challenging to find a tow truck if I ever were to get in a bad situation with a bus or a box truck. For those reasons, buses and box trucks were immediately out of the list, although I would have loved to have a bus for the aesthetic vibe. From a mechanical lens, the 4x4 trucks are definitely the easiest to service and easiest to maintain because many other people use them as their daily drivers. But the only downfall of getting a truck camper is that I may have to remove the camper portion of the truck camper in order to get my truck serviced, which wouldn't be a problem in the long run if I could find storage for the camper and I knew that I wanted to be in areas that I probably wouldn't be able to find that. There's another truck coming. I can hear him. Where art thou? There he comes. Those farmers zooming. Turning to the cargo vans. Ram ProMaster, Mercedes Sprinter, and Ford Transits. All 3 of these vans have their own set of issues. Ram ProMasters definitely have the least reliability in their engine and transmissions. Sprinters tend to have issues at higher mileage, and then Transits have leak and rust issues if you don't maintain the exterior of the van. They also can have some issues at higher mileage. After watching van life creators for the past 5+ years, I knew immediately I did not want a Ram ProMaster. And I have watched a couple of different van lifers that have ProMasters and they either bought them new or used, and in the long run they had frequent engine problems that costed a lot more money than I would want to put into a van. Sprinter was my other option, but because it is a Mercedes vehicle, it would be challenging to find a mechanic in some places. It is a fancier brand, so the cost could jump pretty sky high for repairs. I landed on Ford Transit then. They are an American-made vehicle, so most of the parts, if needed, if it broke down, are widely available, and mechanics are normally pretty willing to work on them. The next thing I had to consider was the size of the van I wanted. I am going to be traveling with my 2 cats, my fur babies, and I wanted enough space for them to be able to play around if I was stuck in the van all day long. I also wanted to be able to stand up comfortably in the van without having to hunch. Most buses and box trucks, you can stand comfortably, and you can also lay side to side. Most of them accommodate for people taller than 6 foot. Truck campers are the same way. The only downside with truck campers is that the walkable space is about 50 square feet. Turning to the cargo vans, we'll start with Ram ProMasters. They definitely have the lowest vertical height for standing at 74 inches for their highest option, but the side-to-side room, you can fit a queen-size bed comfortably. Mercedes Sprinters have a headroom of about 77 inches, which is significantly higher than the Ram ProMaster, but the side-to-side room is really narrow. Same with Ford Transits. They also have a very narrow side-to-side, but their vertical height for standing is about 80 inches. Long story short, if the standing room is your main concern, get a Ford Transit. If sleeping without having to make exterior modifications like flares is your primary concern, get a Ram ProMaster. I also wanted to consider the wheelbase options for all of these vans. Ram ProMaster definitely has the shortest interior length at about like just over 13 feet, whereas the Sprinters and Ford Transits both had over 14 feet of interior space. So if I wanted the longest option of cargo van, I would go with a Mercedes Sprinter, but Ford Transit sits right below the Sprinters, about a foot off. Next, I wanted to consider the resale value of whatever rig I bought. I do know that I'm going to enjoy nomadic life because I traveled around in my SUV with the bare minimum setup in it and absolutely loved it. So this is kind of the glorified version of that for me. But I did want to be able to sell whatever rig I chose for the same amount of money I bought the van and built it out for, if not more. I knew right then and there that buses and box trucks would not be a good option. Their resale value plummets due to their poor engine longevity. Truck campers are kind of a niche traveling form, so it would be harder to sell the truck camper itself, but the truck value is definitely worth the purchase price if you get a good truck. The 3 types of cargo vans are the most common van life vehicle right now, making them easier to sell, but not necessarily at a better price. ProMasters definitely cost the least up front, but that directly correlates to their resale value. They don't sell for what you bought them for because of their poor engines. Sprinters definitely have the highest initial cost, but that also makes their resale value pretty high. Transits can have an expensive initial price, but they also can have a pretty affordable price depending upon where you find them. If you're willing to look hard enough, you could probably find one within your budget. And their resale value is normally break even or a little more than what you bought it for. I knew if I wanted a cheaper initial price, I would want to buy a bus or a box truck so I could spend more money on the build. If I wanted a higher initial price and put the equivalent amount of money into the build or more, I could get a Ford Transit or a truck camper. All this being said, it's highly dependent upon what you want to do for your build, whether you're buying one that's already pre-built, buying one that you're going to convert yourself, or hiring professionals to do it for you. The last most exciting test I wanted to do was a driving test. I did not test drive buses or box trucks just because of all the other stuff I listed previously. I knew it wasn't the vehicle for me. And I used to work on horse farms full time, so I'm used to driving very large vehicles, and I knew the limitations that I would run into with both of those types of vehicles. I have driven truck campers before, and I know right out the gate, almost all trucks are very comfortable to drive long term. The only hiccup would be that it is a little bit bumpier because of the weight on the back, but overall they're pretty superior in that way. When I test drove a ProMaster, they drove like a car, but it was really stiff on the steering and the suspension was crap. I did not feel comfortable at all driving one of them. When I test drove a Transit, it was like driving a large SUV, and it felt very comfortable to drive for long periods of time, both for the seat and the suspension. When I test drove a Sprinter, it was very similar to a Ford Transit, how it drives, but it drove a little bit more like a truck, and it definitely drove as large as it looks, if that makes sense. At the end of my research, I knew I would be deciding between either a Sprinter, Transit, or a truck camper. Reluctantly, I did X-nay truck camper off the list because I knew I wouldn't be off-roading a ton within my first year of travel. I ended up going with a Ford Transit for a couple of reasons. The main one being the initial purchase price being a bit more affordable for my budget. I also felt very comfortable driving it with both the height of it and the length of it. And of course, its reliability with other van lifers is very high. That's it, guys. That's why I chose this Ford Transit compared to other rigs that I could buy. Let me know any comments, questions, concerns in the comments. I would love to hear from y'all. Thanks. I'll see you next time.